Hey guys, I'm super excited about making this video. I'm finally getting around to it, and guess what? We're gonna learn how to revarnish your own wood canoe paddle. This paddle here that I have is from Will Collins. I produced it for him 2 years ago, and he has not touched it other than paddling with it for 2 years. So we've got a lot of maintenance to do. We've got a banged up tip. We've got some varnish peeling off in some spots. We're just gonna make it look totally pretty again and give it this maintenance so that we can keep paddling with it for many, many years to come. If you're not sure why you should be taking care and maintaining your paddle, well, here's a fun fact. If you don't, you're gonna end up with cracking in the tip of the blade. What that means is that the more you push off rocks, the more you just bang it up in general, or the lack of varnish that you have, or any kind of finish, even if it's an oil touch-up, that's okay. But if you don't have anything on there, that raw wood is gonna get moist and it's gonna start causing cracks to come right up the blade, and you're gonna end up with an unfunctional paddle. If that's you and you already have a crack in your paddle, and let's say it's less than about 3 inches, then give me a call. My information is going to be at the end of this video. I would love to take you up on fixing that crack for you, and I can give you a quote on it. All right, guys, here's your list of things you're going to need to do this revarnish. First things first, you're going to need a high quality, what I recommend is an oil-based varnish from Epiphan's. They only make one varnish. Everything else they make is either paints or epoxies or things like that. This is awesome stuff. Some of the best on the market in my opinion. It's really good. It comes really thick, so the next important thing is that you get some paint thinner. You don't need as much as I have, obviously. You really just need enough of a splash to get it to fill the rest of the can so we can shake it up, and we'll go over that in a bit. Couple sheets of 220 grit sandpaper, 2 3-inch finishing nails, or screws will also work as well. Just something so that we can hang the paddle off of. You'll see how we do that in a little bit. I highly recommend, since we're using an oil-based varnish, a natural China bristle brush. It definitely gives the best finish with this material. You could also use a dollar sponge brush. I still recommend at least a 2.5-inch size, but if you're willing to spend the extra money, these brushes can last a while if you clean them nicely. Tack cloth, this is really important. We got to get the dust off after we sand the varnish, especially between coats as well as before we even start our first coat of touch-up. And then a hammer for our finishing nails, or a drill for our screws, depending on what you want to use. The links to all those materials are in the description below. I do get an affiliate link with that, so please use those links if you can. It definitely helps my channel as well as my business. So the first thing first with your paddle is you have to inspect it. We got to get an idea of what we're dealing with here. First off, Will's paddle is, for being as beat up as it is, especially on the tip, it's in pretty good shape. I don't see any major cracking happening. I don't even really see any minor, honestly. It's holding up nicely for not having any varnish on it and being a bit, what's the word? I wouldn't call it waterlogged, but definitely beaten up with some water for sure. The other thing I'm noticing here is you can see some of the varnish here, and the logo is trying to like kind of peel off a bit. So we'll touch that up. We got the leather wrap, that'll be on a different video. I'll also link that in the description below on how to tighten this up. You can see how it's come loose and it's moving on him. So we'll definitely tighten that up and make that look brand new. The grip's in really good shape. We just kind of have a light touch up we just got to do to kind of get rid of some of this black dirt and get it sealed again. So the first step's gonna be the tip. This has no varnish on it, and what we wanna do is we actually wanna get everything back to level. So meaning, we have varnish on a lot of the paddle already, and that's in still good shape. We're not gonna take it off. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all of this raw wood area, and we're gonna sand that and get that back to that kind of natural looking cherry wood so that it doesn't have that water damage. We're gonna take off any scuffs and flaking varnish that we might have. Like I said before, here's an example right where the logo is, a little bit of flaking varnish. But as for the top of the paddle, it's just going to be a light scuff just so that we can put a nice new coat on top of it. So first things first, let's scuff up the whole paddle with our 220 grit sandpaper. We don't really want to go super hard. We don't want to use power sanders. I even go through thousands of paddles every year, and I'm always using hand sanding between coats of varnish. It's very, very important that you do that. I'm using a sanding block with a piece of foam on the end of it. It's just what I use daily. It's great stuff. You don't have to. You could even just use the sandpaper in your hand. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to be sanding the whole paddle. You might think that you might be damaging it. You're not. You're maintaining it. And what we're doing here is scuffing it up so that our next coat of varnish will adhere to the existing coat of varnish. And that brings me to another important fact. If you are revarnishing your paddle and it's not one of mine or Ray Kettlewell's, I don't know what varnish you have on there that's existing. It could be urethane based or it could be oil based. I highly, highly recommend that you stick with whatever your paddle had originally. So for example, for Fishell's and Kettlewell paddles, you got to use an oil-based varnish. It doesn't matter if you use the exact brand we use. It really just matters that you use oil-based. Don't use urethane on top of oil or vice versa. If you have another competitor brand, then I would recommend calling the manufacturer and asking what they use or what they even recommend for touching up varnish. So you can see like things are getting very cloudy. What we're going to do here in a bit is we're going to take just like a rag and wipe it off. We won't use the tack cloth just yet because I want to see if I've gotten this flaked off varnish off yet. But you can see I'm going around the whole thing. And then this is where the hard part is we got to spend some good time rounding over and taking off all of that water damage. So it might seem like you're taking off like a whole bunch of the good varnish here. It's not a problem. We're really just, like I said, trying to get that black or brown color out of that raw wood. So it's coming along nicely. Still takes time, you gotta keep working at it. So you can see now, there's still a bit of like that kind of dark, but I don't need to take it down too far. But you can still see we're getting like that nice new cherry looking wood there. Kind of got a bit of a hard edge here now because of the sanding. So I'm gonna actually round this over again and I'll show you how to do that. And then I've also got the flaking varnish off, so we're good now. So here's how you round over the tip as well as sand the edges. Let's fold this guy in half. So gently And we'll roll the sandpaper back and forth over the edge here. And that's also helping scuff up the existing varnish on the edge as well. So in this case, we have the leather wrap on, and we don't want to take it off because it is tacked in with brass tacks. So for just revarnishing, you have with a leather wrap, but the leather wrap's fine, you don't need to move it. We're just going to scuff up the lower half and the upper half because that's all we're going to touch up for varnish. And then we're going to use some painter's tape and cover up the leather so that we don't get varnish all over it. Now we're going to scuff up the whole upper half and clean it up if we need to. I'm just going to get some of this like dirt off the edge of the grip and all that. But we still want to keep those kind of battle wounds, as I like to call them. You can see there's like scratches across here. It's like, yeah, leave it, you know. Why try to make it perfect? The paddle tells a story, so. Remember, don't take off the battle wounds. Otherwise, you're going to end up with no paddle later on in life. Before we varnish, we need to have a clean area to do so. Well, before I had purchased this business, I would just do these paddles out of my garage. It was a perfect place because we didn't park cars in there. It was a big enough area that I could keep it well ventilated when I had the varnish can open and then the paddle was drying. On top of that, we're looking for a dust-free area as much as possible. I know that's really, really hard. I'm lucky now that I have this business and I've got a literal clean room for varnishing. And it even has an air exchanger and it's an awesome spot. The other thing is I'd like to see you all wearing a mask when varnishing. It needs to be an organic vapors mask. It can't be an N95, that's all for dust. It does nothing for you for organic vapors. So we're gonna take our tack cloth and we're gonna clean the whole paddle of all of its dust and get it ready for varnishing. I like having a place to put the paddle so it doesn't get more dusty after I tack cloth it, but I'd like to also tack cloth it at least 2 times with a clean side of the tack cloth. So I'm going to do the first one right now and I'm going to get it into my clean room and just kind of lean it up on the wall, and then I will tack cloth it again when I'm ready to, right before I'm ready to varnish. So you can see taking a lot of dust off. The varnish is nicely scuffed. It's looking good. I am gonna, and this is where I'll leave that link, you can see it in the description. I'm gonna do the leather wrap actually before we start varnishing, but just following along for the varnishing process only. Our next step is to get some varnish on this guy, get the leather taped and all that. But when you see it next, it'll be not so stretched out on the leather. All right, guys, so I have hammered my nails in already. They're a perfect distance for the paddle to be hung like so. The thing is I've learned from my mistakes that if you twist it at all, the whole paddle falls right through. Because the nails are straight. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to bend the nails just a little. And now it doesn't touch as we go in and out. It only touches right in the wave of the nail.
So the last step before we start varnishing, take some blue painter's tape and place it over top of the leather wrap to protect it from getting all sticky. If you don't have any leather, don't worry about it. Just skip this step.
As you can see, the leather stops right here at an angle, so we're actually going to cut that out so we don't end up with pooling of varnish as it hangs vertically under that tape. And then we'll do the same underneath here so we can still kind of touch up on the bottom there. I'm just going to take a razor blade to do that. So now you can see we took that triangle out, so there's no pooling in there. We'll be able to visually see it, so if we do collect any pooling, we can get it out of there. Same on the bottom as well. So now, we're definitely ready for some varnish. So I'm going to hang the paddle back up between my nails or screws, and we are going to take our tack cloth, and we're just going to wipe down the whole paddle, every inch that we're going to be varnishing here. You may even want to do the tape, just in case you got any dust on it, and your hands touch the paddle later. I'm touching it there. And now I hang it back up very gently. And this is where your mask comes into play.
Just dip the brush about a quarter of the way into the bristles. That'll give just enough material to cover the bare wood areas. So for, in this case, the tip of the paddle as well as the flaking varnish near the logo. This is going to bring the paddle back to an even coating. To achieve this, we're going to have to do 2 to 3 coats on those bare wood areas. One of the most annoying parts about varnishing is having to clean your brushes. We use a paint thinner in a glass jar, and we let it soak. This can't be done for super long periods of time or reused too often, otherwise it starts to solidify, and you end up with a completely useless brush.
All right, so now you can see we've got a glossy spot, got another glossy spot, and that's just for our touch-ups. What I can tell right now, just from feeling the paddle, is that the tip, most of the tip, isn't glossy completely yet. So we're actually going to do one more touch-up coat on the tip. And so far, I think that's all we need right now. Everything else already has a good couple coats on it from the previous varnish when the paddle was first made. So I'm going to do another 220 grit sanding just on the tip area here, get it scuffed up. I'll do anything else that's glossy as well, just to get it ready for the next varnish when the time comes. But really, the only touch-up we're going to do right now is that tip again one more time.
Another reason why we sand between coats of varnish isn't just for adhesion purposes, but also because we want to smooth out that finish. So, for example, in this scenario, we have lumps and bumps and humps where the new varnish was just put on, and we need to smooth that out with the existing varnish that's old. So when we put our next coat on, it's going to give us a really smooth finish. We're going to take our tack cloth and remove all that dust before we move the paddle back into our clean room. Now that we have the paddle in the clean room, we're going to take our tack cloth, our brand new one, and we're going to wipe the paddle one more time before we apply varnish. Don't forget that organic vapors mask. And this is just another touch-up coat. So same thing as the first coat, we're just putting it on where those bare wood spots were. And we're just trying to get it so that everything all the way through the whole paddle has some kind of full covering or gloss. So there I just did the tip of the blade. because that's all that needed it.
All right, now we're talking. So now you can see on the tip, we've got full gloss. You can't really feel the wood anymore. So that means we've got it completely even varnish everywhere. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna scuff this all back up and we're gonna revarnish the whole paddle this time.
And again, for the last time, we're going to take our tack cloth, preferably a used one, since this is just going to go right into the clean room from here. We just want to get majority of the dust off. One more tack cloth with a brand new one, or at least a brand new side of one. Give it a nice wipe down, hang it back up, and now we're going to coat the whole paddle in varnish this time. So I did about a half bristle dip, and I'm really just trying to apply it to the whole blade area of the paddle right now, just so I can get a good covering. I did do a quarter dip there, just to make sure I had enough, because I'm going to take the brush straight up to the grip after that, without having to dip again. I have found over the years that if you dip again and go straight to the grip, you're going to end up with a lot of drips on the grip, and it just causes blistering and other issues when you're using the paddle. So I've definitely perfected this finish with how you dip the brush into the can. For those of you who don't have leather wrap on their paddle, you're going to have to touch that area up where your left hand will be holding the paddle. So as you hang it up, you're going to take your brush in your right hand and you're going to touch that area very gently while holding the tip of the paddle with your left hand. Lastly, you're going to squeeze all of that excess varnish out of the brush, grab a new glove, and you're going to stabilize the paddle and gently brush any drips at the very bottom of the tip. And you just want to get that off so that it doesn't collect at the bottom. And there you have it. Your brand new looking revarnished paddle. Finished with a high gloss finish. No drips. No imperfections. But we did leave those battle wounds. Now that we're done varnishing the paddle, we're going to remove the tape from the leather wrap.
Well, that's it, guys. That's how you revarnish your paddle. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it. I'm on all the social channels, and we'll see you next time.